My name is Amalia Torres. I am 102 years old, and I am going to tell you something that you may not like to hear. Most people do not die of old age. They die from what they ate for 50 years. It's not a miracle that I'm here. It's not extraordinary genetics. It's not luck. It's discipline. A few months ago, my great-granddaughter looked at me while I was chopping garlic in the kitchen and said, "Great-grandma, does that really do anything?" I laughed. Because that same question was asked of me for 80 years. If you have ever felt that your body is shutting down faster than it should, write "I want to live" in the comments. Not for me, for you. I wasn't always the disciplined woman I am now. At 19, I ate like everyone else in my neighborhood. White bread, sugar, fried foods, coffee with more sugar than coffee. We were poor. No one talked about nutrition. You ate what filled you up, and then I saw my mother die. She was 44 years old. Diabetes, swollen legs, infections that wouldn't heal, a tired heart. I watched her deteriorate in less than a year. The last night she was conscious, she took my hand and told me something that haunted me my whole life. "Don't eat like I ate." That wasn't advice. It was a warning. That's when I understood something that scared me. You don't get sick all at once. You build the illness over decades. That was my breaking point. I didn't want to survive. I wanted to be clear-headed. At 22, I made a promise. I would eat every day as if my life depended on it, because it did. And that brings me to the 7 foods that have been my foundation for over 80 years. They are not modern. They are not exotic. They are not expensive. They are constant. The first is garlic. And not as a seasoning, not as a final touch in a pan. I eat it raw, crushed, every morning, mixed with a small amount of honey to soften the impact. 2 cloves at first, 3 over time. People looked at me strangely. My own husband took years to accept the smell, but I never negotiated it because I understood something from the beginning. Garlic is not a folk remedy. It is one of the most studied bioactive compounds in the history of natural medicine. The allicin that is released when garlic is crushed has anti-inflammatory, antibacterial, and vasodilatory properties that act directly on cardiovascular health. At 60 years old, my cholesterol rose to a concerning level. The doctor presented me with a prescription as if it were inevitable. I asked for 6 months' grace. I increased my dose to 3 cloves a day, maintained the rest of my habits, and returned to the consultation with the results. The levels had significantly decreased without any medication. It wasn't a miracle. It was the logical consequence of 80 years of consistency concentrated in a moment of need. The body you have cared for over decades has resources that the neglected body does not have. That is the difference that is not seen in a single day's analysis, but is built silently over a lifetime. What garlic does inside has no substitute in pill form. It regulates blood pressure by relaxing blood vessels. It reduces the oxidation of bad cholesterol, which is what really harms the arteries. It stimulates the immune system in a gentle but constant way without overstimulating it. And it has a mild anticoagulant effect that protects the heart without the risks of synthetic drugs. 80 years of 2 cloves of garlic every morning. That's more than 50,000 doses. And each one of them was a small decision to live better. The second is olive oil, a tablespoon on an empty stomach every morning, and present in practically everything I cook. But not just any olive oil, the real one, the dark green one, the one that has a slight bitterness at the end that irritates the throat a bit, and that precisely for that reason indicates that the polyphenols remain intact. My grandmother had a phrase that I repeated for decades. What is lubricated lasts. What oxidizes dies. She had not studied medicine, but she had observed enough to understand something that science took decades to confirm. Extra virgin olive oil is not simply a healthy fat. It is a natural anti-inflammatory whose main component, oleocanthal, acts in the body similarly to ibuprofen but without any of its side effects on the stomach, kidney, or heart. Chronic low-grade inflammation is one of the central mechanisms of accelerated aging. It is behind arthritis, cardiovascular deterioration, cognitive decline, and many forms of cancer. And olive oil reduces it quietly and consistently, meal after meal, year after year. At 102 years old, my joints move. They don't run, they don't jump, but they bend, support my weight, and allow me to walk through my kitchen and climb stairs with help. My skin is wrinkled because that's what skin does over time, but it is neither dry nor fragile. That is not inheritance. It is oil. Decades of good oil, absorbed from within, doing what no cream can do from the outside. And there is something else that few people know. Olive oil improves the absorption of fat-soluble nutrients from everything you eat alongside it. Vitamins A, D, E, and K need fat to be properly assimilated. If you eat a vegetable salad without fat, you are taking advantage of only a small fraction of its nutritional potential. If you dress it with quality olive oil, the body extracts much more from each bite. 80 years of cooking with this oil is not just a habit. It is an absorption strategy that multiplies the value of everything else. The third is small fish, not the large boneless fillet sold in modern supermarkets. The small fish with bones eaten whole or almost whole 3 times a week. The reason is concrete. The bones of small fish are an extraordinarily bioavailable source of calcium, much more than the calcium from dairy for many people, especially with age. Additionally, small fish like sardines, anchovies, and mackerel accumulate fewer heavy metals than larger ones because their life cycle is shorter. They are cleaner, more nutritious, and cheaper than any calcium or omega-3 supplements sold in a pharmacy. The omega-3 from these fish is long chain, the type that the body can use directly without needing to convert it. It protects the membranes of nerve cells, maintains blood fluidity, reduces triglycerides, and has a documented effect on reducing the risk of cognitive decline in older adults. At 98 years old, I fell down some stairs. It wasn't a gentle stumble, it was a real fall. The doctor who evaluated me expected what they always expect when they see a woman nearly 100 years old in the emergency room: a hip fracture. That fracture, in older adults, often marks the beginning of irreversible decline. I didn't break anything. The doctor reviewed the x-rays twice. He asked me what supplements I took. I told him none. He asked me what I ate. I told him I had fish 3 times a week since I was 20. He didn't know what to say. I did know what to think. Bones are not built in a year. They are built over decades. And they are also destroyed over decades. Every time a person decides not to eat natural calcium, every time they replace fish with a supplement that the intestine absorbs poorly, every time they choose convenience over consistency, they are making a decision about the fragility of their bones at 80 or 90. It just seems at that moment that this decision has no consequences. The consequences come later, when it is already difficult to reverse them. I took them the other way for 70 years, and my bones responded. The fourth is sauerkraut, fermented cabbage made at home with salt and thyme. Nothing more. No vinegar, no preservatives, no processing. At the time I started eating it, no one talked about the microbiome or beneficial gut bacteria. Those concepts did not exist in popular language, but my grandmother fermented vegetables because that was what was done in winter to preserve food, and I inherited the habit without yet knowing why it was so valuable. Today, science has a name for what it was doing instinctively. The human intestine houses approximately 100 trillion microorganisms that form what is known as the gut microbiome. This ecosystem not only regulates digestion, it produces neurotransmitters, including a significant portion of the serotonin that the body uses. It regulates systemic inflammatory response. It trains the immune system to distinguish between what it should attack and what it should tolerate. And it communicates directly with the brain through the vagus nerve in what researchers call the gut-brain axis. When the microbiome is depleted, all of the above fails in a cascade. Immunity weakens, inflammation rises, mood becomes unstable, digestion becomes slow and painful, and the brain receives signals that disrupt cognition and emotional state. Homemade sauerkraut contains live lactic bacteria that colonize the intestine and diversify it. It is not the same as a probiotic supplement in capsule form, whose bacteria often do not survive gastric acid. The bacteria from homemade fermentation arrive alive because they have been trained in an acidic environment. They are naturally resilient. At 75 years old, I had a severe respiratory infection. The doctor proposed a long course of antibiotics. I requested a week's grace to try something else. I doubled my sauerkraut intake, added bone broth, and rested. My body responded before the week was over. I don't tell this so that you reject medications when you need them. I have accepted them when they have been necessary. I share this so that you understand that a strong intestine has reserves that a neglected intestine does not have. The difference between recovering quickly and recovering slowly, between resisting illness or being overwhelmed by it, often lies in that silent ecosystem that lives within you and to which almost no one pays attention. The fifth is animal liver, once a week cooked simply, without elaborate preparations. I know it is the food that generates the most resistance. I know this because I have seen it for 80 years. The texture is not pleasant for everyone. The flavor is intense, and in recent years it has gained an unfair reputation as a food to avoid. But liver is, gram for gram, the most nutritionally dense food that exists in nature. This is not an opinion. It is an objective measurement of its composition. It contains vitamin B12 in concentrations that no vegetable can match. And vitamin B12 is not a minor detail for older adults. Its deficiency is directly associated with deep fatigue, memory deterioration, mental confusion, progressive neurological damage, and anemia that does not respond to iron. With age, the stomach's ability to produce the intrinsic factor necessary to absorb B12 decreases. That's why many older people have a deficiency even if they eat well. The liver provides it in such a concentrated form that even with reduced absorption, the body receives enough. Additionally, it contains hemi-iron, the type of iron that the body absorbs with an efficiency up to 5 times greater than plant-based iron. Preformed vitamin A, which protects vision, skin, and the immune system. Folate, copper, zinc, coenzyme Q10, which is essential for cellular energy production and naturally declines with age. A single serving of liver per week provides what no multivitamin pill can fully replicate, because the nutrients from real food come with natural cofactors that facilitate their absorption and utilization. I don't take supplements at 102 years old, not because I don't need them, but because what I eat provides them in their most usable form. The sixth are nuts, a handful every afternoon, varied, without added salt or processing. For decades, conventional nutrition viewed them with suspicion due to their caloric content and high fat percentage. That was one of the most costly public health mistakes of the 20th century. The fear of the right fat, combined with the acceptance of refined sugar as a benign alternative, produced generations of people with poorly nourished brains and inflamed bodies. The fat from nuts is not the problem, it is the solution. Nuts, in particular, contain alpha-linolenic acid, a precursor of omega-3 that the brain needs to maintain the integrity of its cell membranes. Almonds provide vitamin E, which is one of the most powerful antioxidants to protect nerve cells from oxidative damage that accumulates over the years. Pistachios contain lutein, which protects vision. Hazelnuts have folate and magnesium, an essential mineral for more than 300 enzymatic reactions in the body. At 102 years old, I remember conversations from decades ago. I remember names, I remember dates, I remember details of moments that occurred when the world was completely different. I don't know if that is luck or consequence, but I know that I never deprived my brain of the fat it needs to function. Refined sugar has inflamed entire generations. Good fats, those found in nuts, fish, and olive oil, protected mine. That is the bet I made 80 years ago, when there were still no studies to back it up. There was only observation, experience, and my mother's voice telling me to change what she could not change. The seventh is water. 8 large glasses a day, sometimes more. No negotiating, no exceptions, without waiting to be thirsty. Especially without waiting to be thirsty. Because that is the mistake that almost all older people make. The sensation of thirst is a physiological mechanism that becomes less sensitive with age. By the age of 70, 80, or 90, the body can be in a state of mild but constant dehydration without generating the alarm signal it did at 30, and that silent dehydration produces symptoms that are routinely attributed to old age: confusion, fatigue, headaches, dizziness upon standing, high blood pressure, chronic constipation, fragile skin, stiff joints. These are not symptoms of inevitable aging. Many times they are symptoms of a chronically dehydrated body that is not being given enough water. 3 times in my life I was close to developing kidney stones. Each time the doctor warned me of the risk. Each time I significantly increased my water intake and monitored my diet. Each time my body responded without needing intervention. The kidney needs water to filter the waste products of metabolism. Without enough water, those wastes concentrate, crystallize, and form stones. But the kidney is not the only organ that suffers from dehydration. The brain, which is 73% water, reduces its cognitive function measurably with just a 2% dehydration. The joints, whose cartilage depends on synovial fluid to cushion movement, deteriorate faster without proper hydration. the blood becomes more viscous and the heart works harder to pump it. Water is not a health supplement. It is its foundation. And yet, it is the first thing people reduce without realizing it as they age, precisely when they need it the most. I have been consciously and consistently drinking water for over 8 decades. Not because I particularly like it, but because I understood from a young age that the body does not forgive neglect, even if it takes years to show. These 7 foods are not a diet. They are an identity. I didn't eat them for a month. I didn't try them for a year. I lived them for 8 decades. I have buried friends who said, "You have to die of something." Yes, but you don't have to speed up the process. It's not just about reaching 100. It's about how you get there. You can arrive dependent, medicated, dragging yourself. Or you can arrive walking, thinking, deciding, "I chose 80 years ago, and I keep choosing every day." If any of this made you reflect, don't let it pass. Tell me, what would you change today if you knew that your 80-year-old body depends on your decision tonight? Write it down. Because aging is not punishment, it's consequence. I am 102 years old, and I'm still here. Not by luck, but by every small choice repeated over 80 years. Start today. Your future self is waiting.